Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Spincast. I don't know what episode. You tell me what episode. Play the music too, by the way.
8.
8. Thanks,
Episode
Lee.
8.
Lee. We're going to get into it because we're a little bit behind. We had some technical issues, but I'm Brian Kellison. Brian White is here, the two United States contingents. And then we have Lisa Vries, our Canadian representative. And then we have a guest tonight, our first official interview. I mean, we had Casey last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. Josh Peacock from Cycling Canada, he's the director of marketing and events. Welcome. So, quick little bio of who you are, and let me go to my first question here. Is there a group ride where you are, and are you the best in your group ride?
All right. Well, yeah, I am Josh Peacock, as you mentioned, Director of Marketing and Events, Cycling Canada. I've been doing esports myself now since I think 2019. So I'm not that experienced or been around a super long time. But my group ride is usually I'll jump into the Wednesday night Cycling Canada rides. Guilty, I'll usually jump in when we do the national team ones, just because I love the chat on Discord. And I am definitely not the fastest. In fact, the last one I did was it was one of the US ones. I think it was like the US veterans or something, one of those
Oh,
rides.
yeah, it was Canada versus the world.
Oh, no, not one of those, not one of ours. It was some other one.
Oh, right.
It had a posted watts, and like I hadn't been on in a while, and I just got smoked. Holy, that was humbling for sure. Every time I could get on Zwift, it's humbling. I just get ripped apart.
Well, then that goes into we want more masters categories or races. We need more masters because I'm a masters. So
yeah.
But yeah, we can get into it really quickly. Thanks again for coming on. The first one is, why does Canada care about having esports champions? Like, what's the whole motivation? What's the origin story for getting into this?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll speak for Cycling Canada versus kind of the wider nation, but I know that obviously Canada's been active on Zwift in esports for a long time. And I'll relate our involvement back. It was pre-pandemic, but it actually came out during the pandemic. We were working on a new strategic plan, and through a lot of like sort of soul searching into the organization, what we were doing right, what we were doing wrong. We determined that we wanted to change things around a little bit for a national sport organization and sort of put community at the core of everything we were doing. You don't see it a lot with national sport federations like us. Most of the time, the focus is national team, high performance, get the Olympic medals, go out there and crush it, be the best you can be. So we switched it, understanding that, if you want the top performances, if you want cycling to be a mainstream sport in your country, you have to first sort of foster that community and sort of help grow it and be a part of it at the basic sort of grassroots level. So yeah, interestingly enough, before the pandemic hit, we were hosting a World Cup track event. Zwift asked us to jump on a call. Zwift corporate. It was the UK guys at the time, and started talking to us about potentially working together. Us and USA Cycling at the same time. We had some really interesting chats. We were going through it together. We learned there about how much of our cycling community in Canada is actually on Zwift. It was pretty staggering. I'll never forget that conversation where they told us, there were several 100,000 Canadian members on Zwift. Cycling Canada's membership at the time was 35,000. So for us, it was a pretty clear picture.
Does it have something to do with the snow?
Yeah, you might draw that conclusion for sure. So yeah, I mean, for us, we had already been thinking about, all of our staff, myself included, were playing around on Zwift. Some of them OG since the beginning and had always been really talking about it. And so yeah, it drew our attention. And then obviously the pandemic hit. Everybody was scrambling on the federation side to just provide something for their membership holders, their community. Luckily, we had some of those conversations ahead of time, so had a great relationship with Zwift. Then we were afforded the time, which we don't always have, to invest and get to understand the community. We built sort of what we wanted to do based on feedback straight from the community rather than like seeing what other countries were doing. We talked to folks that we
Hmm.
knew were in it for a really long time. And the more it was sort of me spearheading that project. And the more I got to know people in that community, the more I believed in it. Um, and yeah, we decided to make a goal of it. And one thing we do is if we jump into a new discipline or a new community, we don't just do it as a one and done. We didn't want to just do it till the pandemic was over. We wanted to make sure that we were in it for good. The investment that we put in there in staff time was going to stay, and we try to grow it over time. So I think it came natural that first the community bit, the group rides, the public calendar stuff, working with different platforms. We formed a relationship with Full Gas, with RGT, um, and then it just sort of developed over time that hey, there needs to be a racing component here, and we're going to have this opportunity through some of those platforms to do some sanctioned national champs, especially with UCI coming in.
Yeah.
So it all developed really naturally.
So when you say you're talking to the community, you're like the riders, but also just like the fans of the sport, or like casual riders who wanted to see a national competition, or was it like the competitors themselves?
No, so I mean, before nationals, we were just chatting with people that I of course come from the cycling community, so I knew lots of people who were doing Zwift, and I started asking around like, who does this a lot? Like, who could I talk to that is hosting their own group rides or maybe has their own events on public calendar during like pandemic was like the thing. If you could get on the public calendar, especially as a national federation, that was
Yeah.
the golden holy grail. So I needed to talk to people who were on it. So I chatted with some folks who were doing some hosting there and just understood all of that. Um, and then I think it was actually the folks at RGT for the first time
Yeah.
it was James Vickers, who was awesome
I
in
remember James.
that club. Yeah, James was awesome. He came up to us with the idea that they wanted to support the national champs, that they could do some really cool stuff with the in-game overlay. Give me some sponsor banners. We could do some cool broadcast work, and it was like, all right, this just seems natural. Let's do it. We did.
That's great. Yeah, I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of RGT. Well,
Yeah.
even though it was like,
RIP.
I know, RIP.
All right, RGT.
I still like the physics. Obviously, it was a different game. I mean, that kind of rolls into maybe another question here. What goes into Cycling Canada to like decide what the platform or what the like, hey, is this going to be a year thing? Or are we going to do a couple of years? Like, you obviously were talking with RGT. You just said, but then when do you decide like routes or pricing or categories? Like what goes into that sort of decision making?
You know what? Like, what's kind of cool about esports is we don't have the same level of structure that we have to follow as with everything else. So it's like free. We have that freedom to sort of pick all those things and format it however we like. There's a bit of guidance with the way World Champs was run and the UCI doing things, but we don't have to get approval to be on a calendar or to do something. So luckily over those years, I became a participant in it. I became a fan of it. So it was really fun for me just to be like, okay, like we have sort of a carte blanche. What actually went into deciding a lot of those things was just the same way we got into esports in the first place, consulting with community. The first thing we did when we decided it was going to be on Zwift was consult Zwift.
Right.
In the absence of like UCI telling us you can do this, you can't do that, this has to be the length, this has to be the duration, this has to be the course.
Yeah.
We first wanted to see if Zwift was going to do that as part of like offering sanctioned national champs to the federations. So that was actually the first stop. And there was a bit less structure there than I thought would be. They were kind of like, here's some ideas, here's some formats, here's what other countries are doing. Pick your poison, do what you think would work best for you. So that's sort of how
That's
it all
got to be
started.
kind of refreshing coming from your situation where
Yeah.
you can do what you want to do and you're not like, oh man, here's the 5,000 page UCI rule book about nationals. And are we hitting every single one? You can just be like, dude, let's have a race tomorrow.
Yeah, let me tell you, like I was stoked about it. I've been working in that system for 10 years at Cycling Canada, and before that, another 5 years at the provincial office. It's always so structured, and to be like, yeah, just do whatever you think works best for you guys. It was it was awesome because we could do it right by the community and by the folks who were going to be participating in it. So yeah, that was a breath for some folks. Maybe you hadn't been in it as long, not living in the structure for as long as I have, it probably would have been a bit daunting. But for me, it was like open door. Let's go. Let's do it right.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So having the understanding of what structure means
Mhm.
gave you the opportunity to kind of have some free thinking, right?
Yeah.
Oh, very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. It was really cool. And I think looking back, and now I've seen what some of the other countries have done, everybody interpreted that really differently. Not really differently, but there was definitely different interpretations of it and different levels of production. Like I saw what France did. Zwift showed me what their product afterwards. It was crazy. It was a whole in person thing. So we were able to do it within the capacity we had to deliver
Right.
it, and our capacity was me, and I do a million other things. So I was able to keep it a quality product while not doing a full like qualifying series. I just couldn't handle all of that on my shoulders. So we could do it in a decent way without being overwhelmed.
But I
Right.
think the actual in-person thing, I'm torn on that because
Mhm.
we get into indoor cycling because we can do it in our basement, in our garage. Like you're not traveling and packing your bike up and driving for 5 hours. So then it instantly turns it into, well, you're packing your bike up and going across the country to do an indoor race. Like that's to me defeats the purpose a little bit,
Mhm.
of indoor cycling.
Yeah, we thought about that. It's like when we what helped us along with it, starting off with our GT was we had a sponsorship with Wahoo, and they of course acquired our GT. And part of that sponsorship was if we ever decided to do an in-person event, they'd provide all the trainers, and that involved getting the trainers there, setting them up, having some
Mhm.
tech support. But looking at what France did and what Denmark, I think they did an in-person one. It was like
Yeah. I think
that's
Sweden does it
that's
too. Yeah.
yeah, it's cool for where they are geographically because like you can pretty much drive across certain countries in 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
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 For me, if I do a qualifier and I get 20 men, 20 women qualified for the in-person event, who's going to pay for the person from Vancouver flying to the Toronto event? Like they're just going to bite my head off. It's nobody unless
Yeah.
a sponsor is going to pay for all of that. It's
Yeah.
just hard to do here.
That comes up with the United States. Like we talk, I'm with Lee. Like it's like I'm for the progression of the sport and like having but it's also like the convenience of, hey, it's it's kind of our sport. It's in our house. It's in our garage. It's wherever. But yeah, I'm logistically from a United States standpoint and from a Canada standpoint, it's just like not as easy as like, oh yeah, everyone just comes. It's like 3 hour drive. Oh, that's nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
I was bugging Brian about this because I'm pretty sure it was the very first national where you guys were giving away kickers and you guys send jerseys and medals. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure Brian had to buy his own
No,
jersey.
yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. So I think it was the first national it was 2022 where you guys, it was the RGT one.
Yeah.
And so like, I think you guys set a tone for United States to kind of up their pricing. Like your first year, you guys had actual real jersey, medals for first through third, and you had a Wahoo Element watch.
It was the watch. It was the
The
watch.
watch.
Yeah.
The watch. You see?
Yeah.
I know. I'm a fan. I
Brian's
was like, I'm like on Canada, Cycling Canada all the time. And I was like, man, this is cool. Cause I was really geeked up. I didn't think I was going to win my age group. Right. And then I won because there was a sprinter who was Brian Hodges. Shout out to Brian Hodges, a good competitor of mine. But he was on the USA Worlds team that year on Zwift. So the Worlds were on Zwift, and I was like, oh, I'm never going to beat this dude. So I'm just going to race and do my best. And I somehow won, right? And I didn't get a jersey. I don't think I got a medal. It was nothing first year. Second year, I got a jersey finally, and I got the medal because I won it again 2023. But you guys set the tone. And I was like, this is what we need to have. And that's good because you're setting the bar higher to go, hey, this is a sport that we want. And that's sort of, I think that's good for the longevity of it. Right.
and it pumps up everyone else because like
Oh,
on
yeah.
Cycling Canada's Discord, everyone is posting pictures of themselves in their national
Yeah.
esport jersey. And it's just awesome for the community to be like, hell yeah, You know, me and my
Yeah.
friends would joke back when participation was very small. We were
Yeah.
like, man, we're middle-aged fat guys and we have a chance. Like we could show up
Yeah.
at the coffee shop in a national jersey and they'll be like, who's that fat guy in that jersey? And it's like, no, man, he's national champ. You know, it's like
Yeah.
as participation grows, the chances are moving away. But for the first
Yeah.
couple years, there was a chance.
Yeah. So I have,
No,
oh, go ahead, Josh.
no, that was, I think, when that's again like the opportunity to do it right, and we had the full freedom to be like, yeah, this is recognized. This is, if we're gonna call it Canadian Championships, they're gonna get a jersey, they're gonna get some medals. And then part of that Wahoo partnership
Right.
was the
Yeah.
support for it. Like they were behind it. They wanted us to do, and this was Wahoo before it was Wahoo RGT. Like Wahoo
Yes.
fully supported us doing this. So they put up the product. I remember sending that email being like, you guys could be like, I think we made them presented by
Yeah.
sponsor because RGT could do the in-game branding. So we're like, let's elevate this for you. I think we were a bit naive thinking like, we're going to get thousands of viewers on the live stream. It ended up being 500. But at the end of the
But
day,
right. So live is one thing. Live
yeah,
is one thing because
Yeah.
I work in streaming stuff and I do my own streaming personally, but Lee and I talk about this all the time, and I've talked about it. That race, your guys' elite race with Thom Thrall and Matt Usborne was so awesome. And then who was the guy who was always coming up? Who was the
Bruce
the
Bird.
fund? Yeah. And you guys had the broadcast. Oh my god, I'm getting goosebumps right now because that was so exciting for me.
Yeah.
yeah, it was.
Well,
It was a
up
good race.
until
It
the
was a really good race.
2024 race, the 2022 race was the best esports race I had ever watched.
Yeah.
Until 2024 happened. Then now that was the most amazing esport.
The Usborne versus
That was
Thrall
crazy.
was so awesome. And then Matt's interview after was so it was so emotional. Like he was like so emotional. And like, yeah, a lot of people didn't see it, but it's like who are the people of the first and like first Tour de France? Like most people don't know who they are, like 6 or 7 people. I believe Cycling Canada, that race set the tone, in my opinion. That set the tone for like seeing the athletes, because the way the broadcast was set up is we had the webcam, and that's sort of mandatory now. That's kind of like, I just did the Zwift Games yesterday, and they were like, hey, you got to join the Discord or you got to get in the Zoom so you can have your camera on you so we can cut to seeing the person in their basement or wherever.
Yeah.
And you guys had a great race. That was awesome. But it was also like leading up to that, when you guys decided to offer this up, you made a couple decisions, and then I want to talk about 2023. But the decision was you can't race elite and masters because there was a masters before. So what goes into that decision?
Oh boy, that's every year that one's come up. I think Lee, we talked about that in the DMs and stuff too.
I was from my perspective, I am not competitive. I'm at the back of the pack. And for me, as I'm trying to grow the sport, so when I was looking at it through my eyes, I was like, man, we can increase the numbers. I'll pay an extra $25. Then I watched the US race where all it was an elite fest cleaning up on all the age groups. And then they all raced the next day and did awesome.
Yeah.
Like I think the guy who won Brian's category did an attack with like 2K left and almost won the next day.
Yeah.
Mason Rocco is in my age group. Jaden Yeager is also so John, my question is what decision like how contentious does it get in the office trying to decide what you guys want to do?
It's funny, in the office, like I'm just the esports guy, and they just kind of let me do my thing, and that's pretty cool. It doesn't get contentious in the office, although this is one that spreads because I have to like talk to other people, especially folks who've been in the organization longer than me or who help set some of the in real life policies around this, so that I can redevelop my understanding for it, provide proper answers, because like I get really well articulated emails with great arguments for allowing it, and like when you messaged me, I probably at the time was dealing with 4 or 5 emails a day, just like trying to understand. Folks wanted to register for both. I think the main reason being kind of what Lee pointed out there was a lot of what I was seeing was emails from folks who were looking to contend on Sunday that would use Saturday as a warm-up race, but then also like, hey, if I might not win Sunday, then just go in and crush the field in my Masters group. And I wanted to keep it reasonable and fair for the Masters athletes.
Yeah.
So I think, and it's the same spirit we do within real life, is like, if you've raced or if you've taken out an elite license, you cannot race in the Masters Canadian Championships road race.
I'm for it.
The same.
That's a good way
I
to
like
do it.
that.
When you
I'm
said
for it.
well articulated, I think mostly
Yeah.
my emails come across as just I rant all the time. Just
Well, we got so many about that one, and it was refreshing to hear, Lee. I think when you had seen the US race or something and you sent me a note, you're like, okay, like this, just what you just said.
it was
you know?
immediately
like,
after.
okay.
I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure I messaged you on Discord and was like, hell no, don't do it. I
Yeah.
completely agree
Yeah.
with what you're saying because I just witnessed it and it was like mayhem.
Okay, so
Yeah,
go Brian.
I was talking about the age groups, Masters, which would be me, just your average guy in your basement. I think 8 or 10 of the 20 that raced in my Masters, 40 to 44 or however it's broken down, raced in the elite the next day. You know what I mean? Like, I don't stand a chance next year when I'm not recovering from surgery. So, but
So
I will compete. But if you take those 6, 7, 8 guys out, it might change the dynamic of the race because they're not at the elite level. So I like that. I do like that.
I'm for either or, not both.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
Me,
Yeah.
as the United States, I would be discussing this with the United States Cycling, right?
Yeah.
USA Cycling.
Mhm.
But another question, which kind of relates to this one. 2023 combined USA and Canada, very, very, contentious in the boards and everything like that. I won my category, but I liked it to help with the numbers. That's me personally. But how did that go? How did that play out from internally deciding to partner with the United States?
It worked out really well. I think when we take on new disciplines, for example, we always try to connect first with USAC I think it's ensuring that there's some consistency and continuity in North America. Because the thing I hate the most is everybody picking up something new and doing it in a completely different way, in a fragmented way. And then you don't get that community behind it. You don't get that sort of growth at the same level and rate and speed and quality. So esports was one of those things. We knew we wanted to host again at the time, back in real life stuff again. And sort of me being the main driver at Cycling Canada behind it, my time was stretched. And so we decided to hire on Echelon Racing Promotions to help us with it. And, the more we talked to USAC, the more we talked to them, it just kind of made sense. Like, hey, we could pool our resources on things like broadcast, work together with the platform. We don't have conflicting sponsors who are looking to get some rights around the visuals of the event. So like, it all kind of lined up, and back to the spirit of, framework and consistency being similar across the board. We saw that as an opportunity to work together. From a sport technical perspective, I think the biggest one we got right was that an American could theoretically influence the outcome, a Canadian could influence the outcome of an American race and vice versa, as you get the group dynamic going. And so that was about the sport technical side. But
as a competitor in it, I enjoyed it, but it made more stress. Like, you had to be on more. You had to think about it more. Obviously, and I was DSing Lucas Verslois, who got second in the elites, and he had to compete against two teammates. One was American, one was Canadian. That sort of changed the outcome, which can be frustrating, but I think it made it more dynamic. And so I like that you guys took the risk and working with USA to get more people involved. And I think that helped with the fields and stuff like that. So I liked it. The steering thing was another issue. It didn't really affect me because
I would have podiumed if I could steer.
Yeah, right. That was that little hiccup was kind of a bummer, but the
Yeah.
decision to just combine and make it like clear, like, hey, you just have to be. It's like there's no race numbers. Like I wish there was race numbers in the races, like on Zwift. Like I was doing Zwift games yesterday. Obviously, I came in last. Not obviously. I've been demolitioning a bathroom, so I was very sore. But I probably would have come in last anyways because I'm old. Whatever. But in my version of the game and seeing the game, I didn't have race numbers. But in the broadcast, they have race numbers. Where I race outside, I race outside. I can catch people's numbers and go, oh, because I'll do like 45 plus races with 55 plus or whoever, and we'll have different numbers, and we'll race with a 40 plus. And I can kind of eyeball who's who. If I don't know them right away, I can see that numbers. Where in you guys had the orange helmets and we're getting in the weeds here, but having that makes you have to be on even more, which is even more. It's like making a harder course. Like we had, you guys in 2022 had the Magic Road, which was like really cool to have a Magic Road instead of an actual pre-built a road. Having that ability to kind of, you could brand it yourself, you could sell the sell the sponsorship or get sponsors, but also create a Canadian road. I think that's very cool. That's one thing we miss about RGT, but going into that sort of decision making, what's that like?
That was so cool. I loved that about RGT, that you could do that. That year, I remember, was commemorative. Every year we have the Canada Games, multi-sport games, mini Olympics here in Canada. All the provinces come out and they compete. It's like youth age groups sort of. And so we actually used the real course for the Canada Games road race, which was neat because that race, tons of resort, just like the games, like tons of resources behind it, really beautiful overlay on the course itself, like the banners and the arch, like actual in person. But 0.1% of our community gets to ride it on race day. It's like it's only closed for these 20 athletes that make it into the Canada Games. So it's like, let's make this thing accessible via esports champs to the wider community. And it's relevant because we're trying to actually build some momentum into those games later in the summer. So it was really cool to be able to do that. This year was similar. It was like we were talking to Zwift about what courses to pick. And that I went straight to them for that. And I was just like, what do you guys recommend? And they were like, okay, the world's courses, like the world championship ones, I think it was Richmond, Yorkshire, and Glasgow were the three. If you want to do sponsor banners on the broadcast, like your own sponsors for Cycling Canada, you have to use those because obviously they have some kind of something built into those, the gameplay that you can do that. So that narrowed it down. I have sponsors, and for me to give them that extra value is a no-brainer. So it was going to be one of those. And then for us, it was like Glasgow happened this past summer, and everybody was watching Glasgow, all the different world champs that were happening. So for us, it was that simple. It was, again, paying a bit of tribute to an in real life event that had happened that not everybody could get to. Yeah.
That's a tough course. That whole world is tough. No matter what route you pick, it's very challenging.
I think you guys picked a good course. It was really exciting. So the women's too, like the women's. Oh, it was so cool seeing the women's team or the women's racers.
It was crazy. It was crazy.
I almost actually like watching the women's races more than the men's. The women's are like beasts. It's nonstop attacking. It was like attack. They get reeled in and the next person attacks. The men just sort of like they did their thing and there was some crazy stuff going on, but the women are just relentless. It makes for very good viewing.
Yeah, it was really cool.
It was really impressive. And I spoke with Michelle, our winner, afterwards, and she had messaged me like maybe 2 or 3 days post event. And Indy Velo actually kind of took the most time with the elite women's race. They had a lot of different checks and things to do. Everybody checked out in the end. But she was trying to get that jersey really quick, the virtual jersey in game. She's like, do you know when it's coming? Do you know what's coming? I was like, I said in the email, it could be 2 weeks just because I have no clue how long it could take Zwift to do this. Zwift did it pretty quick once Indy Velo was finished checking everything. But the reason she asked me, because she's like, my free trial or whatever it was expires on the weekend. And it was just like, she just took out, she knew it was esports champs, so she took it out. She's a pro road racer, but it shows you the dynamicness of esports, and Zwift loved that. When I told them that story, they're like, Well, she could get like probably a pro badge based on the team she's riding for. Like, let us know and get her in touch. We can keep her on there for good. And then that led to further discussions of like, hey, when we talk about prizing, it was like, have you guys thought for all the national champs a free year subscription for every champion moving forward? Like, have you guys, because like, what if I run into more people like that who just did a 7-day trial, won the jersey, and they never get to see it? You know,
Yeah.
That is awesome.
it was
Actually, I guess that
crazy.
would lead into a question that I have was using Indie Velo as a verification service this
Yeah.
year. That's a very new thing.
Mm.
You know, we had to fill out the forms, you know, we had to upload our weight. I felt from a participant, that was a very easy thing to do. From like your standpoint, how did that work? You know, you said that they had to verify the elite. Like, did that take a load off of you? Like, was it easier for you in those regards?
Yeah, it was good having the peace of mind on that with the verification. I'll tell you, it was a lot of work for the folks who don't do this a lot. Like that's 100%. Like in the week leading up to champs, I was almost full time dealing with emails in Discord. Yeah, I mean, you would have seen the Discord channel lighting up. It was like
Yeah.
everything was about that form. I'd say I'm going to work with IndieVelo to try to make the form maybe more straightforward for some of those masters who don't do this a lot, because
Yeah,
there's a lot of confusion. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
That's one of the hurdles I think for this
Mhm.
sport from a because we talk about this a lot on the show is competitive versus casual, and there's a lot of like hoops that need to jump through. And I felt as a US competitor doing the IndieVelo where you kind of just uploaded it to a folder, and if they needed it, they could grab it, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully that's the future where it's like, hey, I have all this data, like I don't have to do a verification because I hate doing the test. What is it? What do you see in the future of like, hey, is this kind of the turn that we're taking? Is like, hey, it's less hurdles and more clarity, or is it? Do we need to have more hurdles for people, or more like gatekeeping?
I think what you're going to see is, and I noticed the split. The elites, I didn't hear about it. The Sunday races, I didn't hear about IndieVelo at all. They were so used to it. It was something they did. They've been racing at a higher level. They were used to it. And then folks probably like you guys who race at a higher level on the master side or in A-level races or whatever, you're used to it. I didn't hear from those types of Saturday racers. But it was the group you talk about. It's like the casual versus competitive. The casual ones who thought they were just signing up $20, go do another Zwift race on the public calendar, and you're done. It was a bit of a wake up for them, where it was like, whoa, this is a lot of work. But I think that's what needs to happen at the competitive level. You got to have that verification, and people will just get used to it. You know, just like the first time there was ever mountain bike races. People weren't used to having officials.
Yeah.
It's like, you just got to get there.
Do you think that hurts attendance? Like, not the complexity of the verification, not so much the verification, but the complexity of it. You think it's like, I just don't have time for this. I don't. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it does.
And you guys are working on that to try to, as all governing bodies should, to try to find that sort of like, hey, let's make this easier on the competitors so they can compete and not have to worry about all the bureaucracy sort of stuff.
Well, and even like, I'm not sure about your trainer requirements, because I just figured out that my whoosh every Sunday has a Sunday race club, knew about it, but I didn't realize for all categories they had the money aspect. Now granted, it's only a couple or like $100, you know, for the lowest placing thing, but hey, if I can race my bike and win. But the kicker, I have a kicker V4, it's not official, so for me to do it, I got to go buy a new trainer. So that's also one aspect of, as you know, my trainer still is pretty accurate, and at the time was top of the line. But as technology progresses, you're going to get more people. It's like, well, I had the same trainer forever. It's not good. I'm not going to do it. So that's one thing too, that as you get into this situation, people might be in, you know, restriction. So that's kind of the bad thing. It may be like that might turns down some numbers, but then again, it's also the other aspect. If you're going to be competitive,
it's progression versus you can.
I think as
go ahead, Josh.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think as a participant too, I really appreciate knowing that the people I'm competing against have been verified and did jump through hoops. I mean, in 2023, when you had to film
Yeah.
yourself. And that's the other thing is we all live stream all of our Zwift rides, all of our indoor rides. So when it came to like, you had to provide a 1 hour video, we're like, no, piece of cake. I'm going to jump in there, turn my live
Yeah.
stream on and record it. Where I had buddies that were like, how do I even do this? Do I just film myself with my, and I think that was a huge hurdle for a lot of people.
Yeah,
That
it's like
sort of was removed for
Yeah.
2024.
Yeah, it was, you know, it was funny to see both sides of the spectrum, because on one hand, where I had people lighting up my inbox being like, that is way too much. Can I get a refund? Like, I don't want to do this level of work. And you're right, it's not about the concept of verification everybody agrees with. It's like, you got to make a fair playing field. But when it just came to the work of getting verified, a lot of people were turned off. And then the other side, and people were vocal in the Discord about that too, was like, you're not dual recording for the Masters. Like, there were some people who wanted more verification. Like, we were kind of the full spectrum there. So it was real interesting to see that side of it.
Yeah, so that's the dual recording thing. Like, we all know what dual recording is, and dual recording on two different devices. But is there the future to whatever platform, right? So we talk about a lot of platforms, like I use my Whoosh, IndieVelo, all these things, and some have dual recording, some have the ability to do it. I think we should also have a dual recording on your own other device to kind of separate those two. But IndieVelo is definitely leading the charge in simplifying the verification and also real time sort of understanding what's going on.
I've been DQ'd in live in an event, and it was because Amp Plus has little gaps in your data. It wasn't because my trainer was messed up. So that
it's still new. It's still that's the sort of thing, is like there are steps going into it, and there's like I got watt per kilo in the first echelon racing league because I was a Cat B. So Zwift had said, "Oh, you're a Cat B," because I hadn't sent a bunch of data because I was doing RGT stuff or doing whatever it was. And then I do a first race and I'm doing, you know, my attacks in a crit race that I was doing. Well, then I was upgraded and I was essentially filtered out of a race. So the steps are to have you guys on the back end, the ones organizing, the promoters and the organizers, having simplified tools, but also for the competitors to not have to jump through 1,000 hoops, you know, like wanting to, not that we're trying to avoid, I think that's the balance, is we're trying to get there. So the long-term goal is, like you said this at the beginning, I think we were going to ask this question, is like, what's your guys' long-term? And it sounds like you guys already had this in 2019. Do you see in the future, like within the 5 years, maybe even 10 years, that the numbers will increase more because the hurdles will be less, but the verification will be more solidified?
Yeah, I do. And I think for us, I talked to Zwift about this because I don't get a lot of budget, and I'm sure a lot of the national federations don't, because it's not an Olympic sport, blah, 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 all the different reasons. I had to create a new budget line to host this event. 100% of my budget went to IndieVelo performance verification. If I had to cut out on any, like, that's where I put all, and shipping jerseys and medals, which wasn't cheap at the end of the day. We had to do a lot of that. But, you know, I talked to Zwift about that. I said, barriers for entry for a lot of national federations is they have zero. I was able to scrounge together some budget. You know, some of the smaller countries will have zero and they'll just opt not to do it because doing the performance verification has a price tag and it's not cheap if you want to do it right. And IndieVelo is doing it right. But I think the future progression coming from a federation standpoint and how we've always done things in our framework, that's why I said to Zwift, I said, what technically stops like me teaching one of my existing commissaires who's very tech minded? Like, I have some very tech minded officials in Canada who would be all over this. Like, what's to stop them from learning how to do performance verification? And then we can assign them just like any other commissaire to an event. Like, what's the barrier to that? Like, how could we make that happen and then charge a commissaire rate versus paying, you know, a larger amount for an IndieVelo type? I didn't realize how much background work, like, IndieVelo has accesses that other folks don't have. So it's just not that easy. But I think that could be a future progression of this from a federation standpoint, is like actually teaching existing officials or new officials how to do esports. It's not so much officiating, that'll be done through the platform, it's performance verification, and teaching them how to do that and creating a bit of economies of scale there by, I could have somebody from Great Britain be my official for the race that does performance verification down the road.
Well, maybe
So
what you just
Yeah.
said too
Yeah.
is like having, the national bodies have access to the back end to do
Yeah.
their own verification.
Exactly. And then, like I say, I have officials, track officials, road officials who are the absolute, like, they're computer programmers. They're really good with this stuff. If they had access to that data, they would geek out on this and they do really well at it. So it was an idea I brought forward, is like, I see that being the future for federations wanting to, if those ones who do see the potential and want to continue their involvement in esports, like, I'm already thinking about that, because I think it would help to reduce barriers for us, reduce barriers then for the participants. We could reduce, registration fees, put more into broadcast or prizing or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, we've been thinking about that, or I've been thinking about it anyways.
It's very cool. I'm excited.
Okay. Speaking of registration fees, that would lead me into,
Yeah.
what in the future, I mean, for growing the sport, I think a big hurdle for a lot of people this year was provincial membership.
Oof, yeah, it was.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm signed up for 5 gravel races this year, and none of them require Cycling BC. I wanted to compete in nationals, so I got a Cycling BC membership. It's $94 for a one-time event. I mean, I understand it's good to support the provincial bodies, but the $94 is going to insurance and a lot of things that you wouldn't need in an esport event because I'm in my garage. So do you see the possibility? And I think I knew a lot of people that were like, well, I'm not getting Cycling BC, so I just guess I'm not racing. If there was maybe a $15, $20 esport license, you could probably get a lot of people joining up, and you could use that esport money to fund, future events. Because I would gladly pay a $20 esport license, and I'm sure hundreds of other people would as well.
Yeah. We had a good long talk. I got some, I had a really good conversation with Thom Thrall about it. Love that guy. He'll give you great feedback, and we talked about that. And I think Lee, you and I had a good conversation about it. A few people reached out and gave me, their thoughts around it. And I fully agree. Like, I think a lower level consistent offering, like same price in Quebec as it is in BC, as it is in Alberta, 20 or $30. And then it's not just about getting you access to Canadian championships. It's about getting you access to a little bit more in esports, and figuring out what that value proposition is actually my project from now until whenever we can deliver that. Is like, what other value could I give to the esports community via that membership? And then also, how could they use that membership if they want to go try out a real life race? How's that transferable if they want to go do a gravel race in the summer, or if they want to go do a mountain bike race that's sanctioned or whatever? Yeah.
Bring back what was it? Canadian Cup. What did you guys have on RGT? Was it
I don't know if we.
It wasn't you guys. It was somebody else.
It was Cycling BC put
Cycling
on a
BC.
3-race.
Oh yeah,
3-race
If you
series.
could use the esports thing, the esports license that you just talked about, which is great, and use that for like these sort of verified, sanctioned races that maybe have prizing. That would be like the incentive to, instead of just one race on an esports, it's like, oh, just doing it for nationals. Like, I bought my license for the United States because I race outside, and I'm like, oh, well, I'll do this too. So that's the incentive for me, is like, I do outside, but a lot of people don't do outside. And
Yeah,
like,
I haven't raced outside in 6 years, 7 years. So it would just, my license will be solely for this indoor event.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something we had a lot of, like, I took all the feedback that people left about this idea of how to get a membership. And we asked that in our post-event survey too, was like, if you didn't participate in this race, would you have bought? So that I could really identify like people that just bought it for the race. And it was a pretty high percentage. Yeah, it's still live, I think. Yeah.
Give us the link. We'll promote it. We'll promote the survey. Go do the survey. People that are listening, and I'll promote it on my show.
It was good. We kind of like, we expected that. And a lot of and we put it. response there for like, did you participate or no? And if it was no, it was just one simple question, like, why not? And we gave you a few examples. And then if it was a yes, you went through the whole thing. So anybody can answer it, because we wanted to capture the no's. If you didn't participate because you had to get a membership, then that is a problem. Like, we need to work through this, and we need to find a way to make it more accessible or give you more value for that membership. So that's a big one for us, for sure.
Yeah.
I think you caught 2 people that I knew who had signed up early December using a 2023 Cycling BC membership. And when you sent out that email, they immediately messaged me and they were like, I can't believe they checked, which is good that you checked, but they were like shocked that you actually were checking. And I'm like, good on them. Like,
yeah, they were nice guys about it. I know the guys you're talking about. They were like, one of them offered, you can keep the reg fee. I was like, no, I'll give it back. It's fine. Like, I understand. But yeah, I mean, that's another thing too, is I had to go manually. We only had 125 registrants at the end of the day, but we manually checked every single one against our database. And if we didn't have it, we were messaging the provincial offices to see if they had recreational licenses there. So that was a big part of the work. And I think a lot of people weren't expecting that when I sent that email.
And I also appreciated transparency when you came out with the disqualification list. And actually, there was 2 people in my category that I was actually riding with that were both DQ'd. I think one for Power Tap Hub.
Power Tap instead of
Yeah.
And so that
really
transparency was good.
It was good. You know, again, this is something we hadn't dealt with in esports, but I had to go back to my in real life experiences. Like, when you disqualify somebody in a real life race, that you put up a memo to a communique to the public. It goes there, so you have to explain why. And we had done that. Thankfully, we thought about that, because I was like, somebody mentioned it in the Discord. I think it was Bruce Birds. One of the guys said something about it, and it was very true. It's like, if you just see a DSQ, people could think that that was something dishonorable, that it was intentional, that they were, tech doping, whatever. But in every circumstance, it was fairly innocent. Like, they just didn't realize, or something happened on their computer and it switched the power source over or something, and you felt bad for them. But they all took it with they took it with grace. They were like, yeah, I understand fully. Yeah.
So good. that is key for me, because I talk about this a lot, is there's an immediate mentality now, which I hope, whether it's esports in general, but like Zwift at least, if you're winning or going off on the front, cheater. And it's the wrong mentality. It's bad. I don't like it. It's like immediate, like, oh, check his numbers, go to Zwift Power, check his numbers, or check their numbers, or whoever.
Or sandbag.
No, we don't want that. We want to go like, hey, give it due diligence and go, hey, if this is thing, like, me, I get the watt per kilo, because from what I understand is the race was set up for whatever
4.2.
4.2 was the threshold, and I was doing my efforts because I was in a breakaway, because I like breakaway, time trialist, whatever. But there's no clarity. There's no like, why is this person watt per kilo in this race? And it's like the stigma. You get the little stigma. But you guys had a clear communique that comes out and goes, hey, this is the reason why we did the things we did. And that is,
we discussed that list on the podcast.
Yeah, we did the
Canadian Nationals recap. And we were like, we're not trying to shame people.
No.
Like, this is a really interesting document to read through, like, say, one guy at a Power Tap Hub, one just, like I say, added their power meter as their main source. Whoops. Like, which that's totally a big, easy mistake to make.
Yeah. Which is, the hurdles at the beginning of you're nervous about the race, and you're like, do I have the things set up properly?
Because Brian tried to triple recording, all that. I had a weight issue on my national championship, but and I emailed Echelon. I emailed them right away and said, hey, I forgot to change my weight, which was like a kilo difference, whatever. Indivelo looked at it and they said, no, it wouldn't really affected anything. So I got whatever. Cool. There was no issue, but I was clear, and because I was triple recording, doing a stream, all these other things, and that's sort of like, I've added a bunch of hoops. But the person that's not streaming their race, they're just hopping on, and they're like, hey, everything's connected. Or their heart rate monitor, because I have sometimes I have a little spotty heart rate monitor, like Brian had, is his had dropouts, and he got DQ'd from his hour record on Indivelo
those are the things that we're trying to eliminate from honest competitors, because your heart rate could go out in a race outside and you're like, I don't know how to my data, but you still exist on the course, right?
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing, is
Yeah.
like, those are, I think that's the future. Hopefully that's the future, where it's like, hey, these little things, and I know they're testing this on Indy Velo, where they have little issues, or it's like, hey, if somebody loses a heart rate monitor, they immediately they poof, they're out of the race. And it's like, but I just had, maybe it was on right or a battery died. Doesn't mean the power is not there and you're not pedaling. That's the goal in the future.
With Indy Velo, they came out with the, I planned to do this event. Like, I was focusing on this is kind of like my target after during rehab. I get in the race and I've rode 9,000 kilometers or something retarded on Indy Velo at this point. Oodles of dual recording, oodles of info. I'm in the event, 6 minutes in, boom, you're DQ'd. What?
Yeah, no explanation.
No explanation. Oh. I mean, I am fuming, and I immediately messaged George Gilbert, the founder and the main coder and everything, and he said repeating data, and I'm like, I have no idea what that means. And if it wasn't for Casey Schum, who used to be kind of like what Bjorn did with Zada before Bjorn came in, Casey left and Bjorn took over. He explained it to me. Otherwise, I would still, a month and a half later, I have no idea why I got DQ'd. So what you guys did with explaining, hey, this is the reason. Obviously, Indy Velo may have 2,000 people. I have no idea how many people got DQ'd that day, but still, the explanation of, hey, this is why.
It's good for the sport. It's progressing. Clarity is good.
Yeah,
and it's not calling people out.
It was interesting. It was like the bummer for me at the end of like an awesome weekend, because I was like, oh shit, there's people who DSQ'd. Like, I can't just mark them that way. I gotta send them an email and let them know that they're gonna show up as DSQ. So I'm like on this high of like great feedback, great weekend. I'm like, now I gotta go tell these guys they're getting kicked out. Yeah. All the ladies, actually, every single Masters woman was checked out fine. It was all the dudes, but I messaged them, and it was really refreshing, their attitude towards it, because I'm used to DSQing people in real life, and I've had some screaming matches, coaches yelling at me, parents, whatever, and that's what I was expecting. But they were all quite apologetic. A lot of them knew, like, oh shit, I saw it switch over to my second power source. Like, that was, I figured it would come up, like, my bad. And then a lot of them be like, is it okay? Am I still gonna be able to race next year? I thought that was really fun. I'm like, yeah, of course, like, it's fine. Like, it was after having those emails back and forth that I was like, we can't just post the results, because these are really great people and they made an honest mistake. So they deserve that communique that's going to kind of not clear their name, but like make it a bit more transparent that this was not a malicious thing. It was.
Yeah. We've had you for like an hour, so we're going to get close to wrapping up. But I just wanted to follow. Is there a time frame for someone to protest? There's a time frame. And then there's a time frame to prove their whatever side of the story.
Yeah, what's interesting is we didn't have a stated time frame there. Like, I think I would have just gone through it until, like, if they sent me something that I thought was legit, I would forward it over for George at Indy Velo and see what he thought, and then do a little bit of back and forth. But that's actually a really good point. Is in real life, there's a 20-minute protest period.
Yeah.
Because we got to do podiums. So you get 20 minutes after the results are posted, and after that, they're going to stick. But I think you'd give a little bit more grace with esports, but that's an interesting one. I'm going to make a note to put that in the tech guide for next year. It'll be a little bit more time. Like Indy Velo gave us a 48-hour window. They said, generally 48 to 72 hours, we're going to have everybody in. So I'd probably follow there.
That was for like, I think some of the documentations, whether it's through Echelon Racing League or just national championships, it was like results will come within like 48 hours. So they gave a buffer on results, but like I've had an outdoor thing where like the protest time had expired, but like people had left, like people drove away and you couldn't do this sort of thing. And then there was like no podium. It was way late in the day, whatever. So yeah, having this sort of like, hey, your protest period is this a lot amount of time after the thing. Like if someone is like, hey, I want to question this person live, not that we're trying to do that. The main goal though is to, well, you can finish on this point here, and if anybody has any final questions, but is we want to get it right. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Is we want to get it right. The competitors want to get it right, and the scoring and the organizing body, they want to get it right. That's the main goal.
Yeah, my barometer at the end of the day has been and always will be the community and what their thoughts and feedback on how everything went, because that's who I'm doing it for. So that's why the survey was so important. But yeah, you're exactly right. We want to do it right, and I hope that through all of us different federations doing it in different ways this year, we can find a bit of consistency and then sort of apply some of those economies of scale and build the sport together at the competitive level. It's already doing so well at the community level. And competitive as well. I mean, Zwift is doing great things, but I think that you nailed it. We just got to do it right. That's what everybody wants out of this. Yeah.
And from like the outsider, I didn't compete in either events, but the Cycling Canada information about what you need to do prior, about all the things because I read both sides. Cycling Canada.
Did you read it in French, Brian?
So, I didn't. I recognize some
it's
words in
bilingual
French.
too. That's double their budget. Do you get double budget because it's bilingual?
I wish.
Yeah.
But
it was so much more detailed. You guys
I love reading the Canada
nailed
stuff.
it.
I love reading the Canada stuff.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that.
Appreciate
that. That was one of the feedbacks though, was like doing it in both languages made that tech guide like 25 pages or something. So one of the feedback was just post 2 documents, a French one and an English one. That was so long. I'm like, fair. Yeah, we'll do that next year for sure.
Yeah.
All right, you got anything more? Lee,
I like to say, like, maybe I'm biased because I am Canadian, but I feel that Cycling Canada, we appreciate everything you're doing. And I think you are doing way more than a lot of federations are, like the Monday ride, the Wednesday ride. I was shocked when I was on the Wednesday ride, everyone was in Discord. There was like 20 people chatting. We had Team Canada cyclists, and it was French, English answering questions, the Saturday Fundo, the Canada versus World race.
I loved it.
That was amazing. That was like a super cool format. And I'm not competitive. I didn't get any points, but I raced in every race. And I just thought it was like a really interesting, race to lead up to nationals.
My only point is I think we could have more clarity on it's the world versus Canada, because it became, I don't know if it was the world competing versus the world, and then the Canadians were Canadian versus the Canadians. Like, I think the world could have beat up on Canada even more. At least
I think so.
Masters.
Yeah, that was
That's
the
what
hope. Is like, come on, let's go.
Because I was racing with a 50+ national champion, Scott Cunningham, and so I was like, are we racing together? Like, we were working together to kind of beat up on Canadians, which I love Canadians, so I don't want to beat up on the Canadians. But
you were working together and apart.
Yes,
because you still wanted to beat Scott.
I still wanted to beat Scott, but I was like, hey, I'm going to go on an attack, and then he's going to come, and then I'm like, hey, go counter right off of me, Scott.
And I was telling Scott in his chat, I said, BK's off the front. When he gets caught, he wants you to attack. Like, I know him. I said, if you don't attack, he'll be mad. And Scott's like, I'm on the edge. I can't do anything. So that was fun. I loved watching the live streams of Canada versus World. And when you said something about you're trying to, make it interesting, that was cool. I really enjoyed that aspect of the lead up to it. You just didn't do a couple races, boom, national championship like the US. Like, it was like an event. Like, I really enjoyed that. That was really awesome.
Prepare people for the national championships, but it brought which you brought at the beginning of the show was you specifically focused on community, which is huge, and I think the community is the core of this sport.
Yeah, 100%. It was really interesting because Zwift came to us and they said, as a part of hosting national champs, you're going to have access to a qualifier series if you want, and the national championship event. And it was like, we don't have the resources to go full on like Echelon did with the qualifier series, but like, we don't want to forfeit that either. It's a really cool opportunity. And I've got my colleague Chris, who's overseeing the community component. I do more of the competitive side, but he's been overseeing the weekly rides, all that stuff. And so Chris ran with that. And I
have a controversial question. Sorry, throwing this at you. Are you part of the selection committee of the riders that are racing in the World Championships?
No,
Okay,
that
so you're
is
different
fully
than
our
that.
high
Okay.
performance. That's our national
Okay.
team. I'm going to
Okay.
help put the event together, but yeah.
Okay. So I have a question about the year previous's event when you had the lead up. I think Thom was a part of, and and some other the gentleman that passed away. Oh goodness, he was a competitor.
Chris
Chris,
Yep.
yep.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember when that was on Zwift, and Lucas Versois is someone who competed, but you had other non-Canadians. It was like an open competition for selection committee.
Yeah.
It seemed
I remember that
it
now.
seemed
Yeah.
odd. I think it seemed odd.
It was weird. Now I wasn't, again, that was Chris from our community side who facilitated that. But basically what had happened from my recollection, because I just kind of was CC'd on emails and that was all coming through. But basically the national team wanted to do a qualifier event. We had public calendar access because we were on there every Monday, Wednesday. So we lent one of our public calendar races to the high performance team to be like, do your selection here. But because it was public calendar, we couldn't limit it to Canadians only.
Okay.
That's what it was. Yeah,
that was the controversy. That was the hard hitting controversial question, and you.
Yeah. But I think what was cool about the Canada versus World this year, we actually got the idea when we were chatting with a gentleman who was an editor at Zwift Insider. He runs Mountain Massif now. I don't know why his name's skipping me, but
I can't remember it either.
Yeah, really great guy, supporter of everything we do. And he's been one of the guys I've connected with since the beginning. But he's like, what would be cool is if you could do a race with the same categories as nationals. I don't know if Zwift will let you. And I'm like, okay, well, we might as well try.
I love age category.
I love it. It's so awesome.
Yeah,
especially an old person who doesn't have the heart rate anymore.
Because I don't know if they still do them, but I remember the Clydesdale races on Zwift because I'm 200 pounds.
Yeah.
I'm 200 pounds. My watts per kilo. Yeah. And so I remember thinking that it was like age group. It's the same idea. It's like I might have a chance in an age group race, just same way as Clydesdale races. Maybe, but yeah.
All right. I have one more thing, but it's funny. How many Canadian Tire dollars do you have in your account right now?
Oh, okay. I'm gonna get real Canadian with it, you guys.
I have to go. Lee is laughing.
The app on my phone.
I signed up and I'm not even Canadian.
So I just today learned what Canadian Tire was. I just thought it was like a tire shop. And then Zachary said something about a soda stream. I'm like, wait a second. What is Canadian Tire? Because I'm imagining
this is an inside joke, but no, it's huge in Canada.
You go get tires? No. So much more.
Way more than tires.
$53.72.
My God, you're crushing me.
Because I never want to spend it.
I don't have that much.
I never want to spend it. I'm like, I'm going to save some. Yeah.
I think we're ending on a high note. All right, let's get out of here.
Nothing beats the old days, the paper ones. Remember those?
Oh, I still have some paper money.
Those were it's like Monopoly money, the best.
Oh, that's
what's funny is stores used to actually take it because they could go and buy supplies at Canadian Tire. Well, I worked in a bike shop, and our bike shop would take Canadian Tire money.
All right,
Canadian National. We're just the best country, aren't we? That's just awesome.
I love Canada. I love Canada. Canadian National Hour. That's the show.
That's it.
All right. We want to thank our guest, Josh Peacock from Cycling Canada.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Cyclism Canada as well, bilingual.
Hey, got your French dialed.
My wife's French, so I speak a little French, but not Quebecois. Not very Quebecois. No.
Yeah, that's different.
We play the music. Lee just cuts us off. I mean, we just keep talking.
I do cut you off. We're not cut off yet.
No, we're not.
We got about 5 more seconds.
Josh, thanks again. It was a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, that was excellent. Cool. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
We're fans, even from south of the border. Fans.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Appreciate the love. And we'll be back for more next year.
All right,
for sure.
Play the music.
Sounds good.
There's no music, but get out of here. Get your Canadian Tire money ready to go.